If you're an ambitious software engineer in your 20s or 30s, this will be the most important video that you'll be watching all year and potentially in your entire life. Now, if you're not in that age range, I would still highly recommend you watch this video in case it still applies to you. Without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Now, the main reason for today's video is for specifically one reason and one reason only. I've talked to more than 1,000 of you already with one-on-one calls that I've had. And the most fundamental pattern that I've been seeing in developers within the 20 to 30 range is that they feel like it's already too late for them. That they committed to the wrong job, that they committed to learning the wrong stack, that they already pigeonholed themselves in a certain situation and they can't get out of it. The most fundamental issue with this is that I should be hearing the opposite. I should be hearing this from the older ladies and gentlemen as opposed to the younger folks. But the irony in this entire video is that the younger people are feeling this way, that they feel like it's already too late, that they've dug themselves in a hole that they can't get out of. This has been true for those who already think they went into CS and they have a very negative outlook of what CS is going to be like, right? They're currently studying in university. This is true for all the developers who got any job that they could really get their hands on. They feel like they pigeonholed themselves. This is true for, let's say, some of the more senior devs in their 30s who have realized that, they didn't maybe build too good of a network, that they spent their time on the wrong things, they didn't get into entrepreneurship any sooner, and thus it's already too late for them. This video is largely tailored for those individuals, but once again, if you're not a direct fit, I would still highly recommend watch it in case you do get something out of it. Now, first and foremost, who am I, right? Why am I talking? My name is Bago. I wrote my very first line of code ever in MATLAB back in 2016, and in the following year, we went on to win the Los Angeles Regional for my robotics team. After that, I went to UCLA to join the Elegant Mind Club, which is essentially doing research on the human consciousness. From then on, I went to NASA as a computer engineering intern. After NASA, I went to UCSD to study electrical and computer engineering, and in my junior year of university, I landed my first private job working for the private space, meaning I joined the Fortune 500 as a software engineering consultant. This was my very first ever paycheck that I got as a software engineering consultant, and after 3 years of going from junior to manager, one of the fastest promotions, this was my paycheck. Now, keep in mind this doesn't include any bonuses, but just to show you that almost pretty much doubled my earnings in less than 3 years' time. And then I quit to found AB Analytics, which is the consulting firm that I run to this day. And just in the last month alone, this is how much revenue it has brought in. Keep in mind, this is revenue, not profit. I do not keep this much, okay? I have expenses, plus I have to split everything at the end by half because I do have an equal partner in this. And last but not least, if you want to know a lot more about me, there were plenty of losses, plenty of wins as well. It's all on my personal website, about.code2co.com, and you'll learn about Code2Co as well and what it entails. Without further ado, I'm going to get straight into the video. So first and foremost, I made this little meme here so you can understand, is that I got into the tech space relatively late compared to most individuals. Now, I know what you might be saying, but you got in your teens, right, in your early 20s. In a lot of the classes that I was in, especially university, my competition were students who were already programming from, let's say, the ages of like 9, 10, or 11, who were being taught coding from a very, very young age. I don't particularly know why. Maybe it was just a demographic at UCSD. My classes were largely comprised of Asian individuals, right? Primarily Indians, Chinese folks, and they took that education very seriously. So it was always surprising to me to see them start very early on. I wrote my first line of code, I believe, when I was like 16. So for me, it was a little weird from the perspective of I thought, okay, I'm already way far behind. These individuals have 5 or 6 years more experience than me. So whenever I went into it, I thought, okay, I can't ever be a 10x developer because I started way too late. These individuals, when their brain, was essentially absorbing the most amount of information whenever they were very young, they spent that time on coding and learning these things, and I spent my time, I don't know, doing God knows what, so I'm just going to be naturally behind. And my entire software engineering career, I always doubted my technical skills because of that, because I thought, okay, even though we went to the same university, these individuals had about extra 5 or 6 years with coding, right? Whether they did coding boot camps for kids or whatever the case. Once I actually got my job and I started diving into the entrepreneurship world, I realized that this does not make any difference whatsoever outside of maybe they'll complete a work project, a personal class project ahead of me, might get a higher grade than me, but in the real world, it plays almost little to no significance. Let me explain why. And this meme perfectly summarizes it. Most people, right, when they think that they're wasting their time and they need to kind of lock in, and if they want to especially start a business as a software engineer, right, focus on a startup, a SaaS idea, they think they need to optimize everything, their GitHub portfolio, they need to start a personal brand, they need to get an audience, they need to find their niche, they need to focus on their ICP, all these things, right? But the people who are a little bit more naive, they might say, okay, I'm just going to build something and then see where I go from there. And then what I realized was that that's really the key. You just need to build something, right? Like, you don't need to do this entire thing. And let me just dive straight into what I mean by this. I'm going to remove this. So most individuals, right, when you're in your 20s or 30s, most often than not, you already have a little bit of technical skills, right? You're technically adept to a certain degree. I'm going to put technically adept. You have had some working experience in the corporate world, and now you're in a position where you might not be where exactly you want to be, whether you're in golden handcuffs, whether you're working on a project you don't want to work on, whatever the case, right? You are motivated generally by the same exact motivations as everybody else. You want to work on something that you actually like, because before you are a code executioner, before you're a software engineer, you're a creator, right? That's why many of you got into software engineering in the first place. So at your core, you're going to want to create cool stuff. Like creating cool stuff, you should want this cool stuff to affect a lot of people positively, and you should get paid a good amount for building a lot of cool stuff. That's really all it comes down to. As a software engineer, almost everybody would largely agree, you want to build cool stuff, work on cool things, have fun while doing it, and make a shit ton of money while doing it. Those three things. As simple as that. That's what I'm going to assume. If you're not in that, you should probably stop watching this video. So the main thing that I learned is as follows. You are never really behind. I know this sounds a little weird, and this isn't some type of cope video that I'm trying to make and tell you, oh, it's going to be fine. No. Let me explain the exact kind of criteria that you should, if you're in it, you're not really behind. If you already have work experience, meaning you passed interviews, you got a job, and you weren't fired because you performed at a baseline level or you got an income, right? Whether or not you like or don't dislike your job doesn't matter. You already have working experience, right? You have a degree. Now, whether or not you're self-taught, doesn't matter. When I say degree, I mean you have the fundamental knowledge of a software engineer, right? And third, you have some personal projects. You already have all the tools you really need to succeed. Let me explain why. First and foremost, work experience is necessary for entrepreneurship because it shows you the life that you'll have if you don't get into entrepreneurship, right? Now, most of you, keep in mind, I'm going to tailor this video towards entrepreneurship. I'm not going to talk about climbing the corporate ladder or getting a good job because I personally don't believe in it. So it would be unfair of me to sort of talk about it in that regards, right? I can give generalized tips to it, but I'm not going to focus the video on that because I personally don't want that for you guys. So the next thing with regards to the degree, if you do have a degree, especially from an accredited institution, or even if you're just self-taught, you have the advantage of understanding the technical side. So the main difference between yourself and somebody else who's just going to vibe code using AI is you'll at least know how to debug it, right? Whereas they have to go get somebody else. And then the personal project shows me that you have the autonomy to actually do things on your own. You don't need necessarily financial motivation or anything like that to build stuff. It shows me that you are already a creator. You like creating for the sake of creating because that what comes natural to you, okay? If you have these three checked off, then you're pretty much not actually behind, and all you really have to focus on is now to use your time wisely. The reason I say use your time wisely is because the main difference between where you are right now, so in this state where you are in pain and you are not happy where you want to be, then it doesn't matter whatever your age you're at, and wherever you, let's say, want to be, right? This is you happy. The main difference over here, however long this distance is, I'm going to put X distance. It's simply a difference of knowledge. Because if this person over here time traveled back to here, right? Let's say you adopted the brain that the future you will have from 20 years from now, you will most likely be able to make the same exact you will be able to bridge the gap within a fraction of the time. Now, it will still require time because action requires time. We're not doing things at the speed of light for it to be instantaneous, right? However, you will be very quickly, as the 20 years will probably be turned into, I don't know, less than a year, most likely. So all you really have to understand is this knowledge gap. You have to understand, okay, there's a knowledge gap that I have, and my number one most fundamental thing that I have to do is pay off this knowledge gap. Now, this is the age-old question. Okay, Bago, I already know all of this, okay? How do I do this? How do I exactly pay this off as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible? You'll find a lot of answers varying all across the internet. The main thing that I've discovered after not only helping a lot of you, speaking to a lot of you, doing this myself, the best way you can pay off this knowledge gap is to be adventurous. If you're a little bit confused, trust me, just continue watching. So the reason I say you need to be a little bit adventurous is because for the longest amount of time, I didn't know that I could just do things. Most of you, if you're anything like me, before struggled to essentially make money outside of an employer. I had a very hard time before my business and I went through that route. I had a very hard time making profitable money outside of relying on an employer. And I didn't really know the things that I could do to make that money. I didn't know that I can just cold call people. I didn't know that I can just email people. I didn't know that I can just send a DM. I didn't know that I can just walk into a business. I didn't know that I can go to a business event, make conversation with people. And without having any business prior to that, without having to have some type of grand knowledge, nothing. I could just be an everyday regular nobody even. And I could just still walk up to somebody, offer something, and at least for them give me a shot, convince them to give me a shot to do something for them. Right? I didn't really know that you can just do these things. So the most fundamental barrier, the most fundamental mental block you have to get past is for you to understand that you can just do things. There's no real restriction. There's no real chain on you that's preventing you from doing something. So now, some of you might have family situations. Some of you might just have life situations where you can't do certain things, right? But in a grand scheme of things, for the most part, you can just do really anything from the perspective of getting out of your situation and paying off that knowledge gap. For example, if your knowledge gap and you understand that, hey, I know a lot technically, but I have a very hard time communicating with people. I have difficulty communicating with people, maybe public speaking. I can't really sell myself too well. I don't know how to attract that kind of an attention, right? That's why I wouldn't do good in business. Then the best way you're going to pay off the knowledge gap is to be adventurous enough to do the thing that's going to get you to learn about that specific knowledge, okay? I'm going to use, let's say, communication as an example. Let's say you want to be able to communicate better, and then you're going to have to pay off the knowledge gap. Most individuals are going to go on YouTube, they're going to go on Amazon, order a book, read that, consume that information, because that's generally the regular way of consuming knowledge and paying off the knowledge gap. That's not the adventurous way. The adventurous way of paying that off would be to put yourself in a situation to actually be a do or die such that you have to do it. An example, you can right now just join your local chamber of commerce if you're from the United States, talk with, let's say, the main leader there, and then say, hey, I want to give a talk about software, or I want to give a talk about AI, or I want to give a talk about this specific thing. Set me up for, let's say, next Friday. Here are my credentials. I want to do a public speaking event. All of a sudden, you've now created a situation for yourself where you will be presenting in your local area to business owners, some of whom could actually very well become your next clients, and you put yourself in a situation where you need to perform. And this is one of the fastest way that you pay off this knowledge gap. Because fundamentally, whenever people plan for things, right? Let's say they plan on a 10-year timeline. Oh, I want to, set up this business, make this money, have kids, blah, 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 blah. What if you squeeze this 10-year timeline into, let's say, 6 months? Now, if you're a rational human being, you will most likely not be able to get to where you want to get to with your 10-year plan in 6 months. However, you will make so much progress. You will make such significant process that you will have paid off probably like, I want to say 10 years of that knowledge gap, right? In about like a 1 to 2 year timeline. This doesn't mean you'll get there in 1 to 2 years. This just means you'll know exactly what to do and how to do it to get there in 1 to 2 years. Meaning you're still gonna have to let time take its course, but at least you'll know exactly what to do and what not to do. So this is what I mean. This is once again, this is specifically tailored for software engineers because from even my own perspective, I also had a difficulty in talking with individuals, putting myself out there, and I could just do things technically, right? I never really applied it to stuff outside of technical ability. Like I could just sit right now on my computer, I can make any personal project, and some people like might not understand how powerful that is, but if I have contacts, let's say in healthcare contacts, that's a doctor contact, that's a dentist contact, that's a lawyer, I can talk to them, make a personal project that helps automate something in their business, let's say, or creates like a CRM software for them, whatever. I can just do this all on my own free time. I have the power to create. But I never applied the same exact thing to pay off my knowledge gap with regards to businesses and other things until much later, until I actually got into business and I was put in a position where I have to do this. So that's really the point of this video. You don't have to feel behind because you are never really behind. If you consider yourself behind, it's most likely because you're not taking the right action. If you've identified, if you fall under this checklist, right, if you have all three checked off, you already have everything you need to pay off this knowledge gap as quickly as possible. And all you really need to understand is, okay, what knowledge gap do I have to pay off specifically? What am I most lacking in right now, right? To just take a look at yourself, observe yourself, be honest about it. What do you lack? If you're good technically, what do you lack then? For a business, for example, you're gonna need marketing skills, sales skills, negotiation skills, right? All these things. What do you lack? Do you like all of them? Okay, if you like all of them, take a look at them from the 80-20 perspective. Which one has the highest ROI? Well, it starts from marketing, right? Because it doesn't matter how good of a salesman you are, if you can't gather attention, you're not going to be able to sell anything. So the first step is gathering attention. So then you take a look at, okay, my marketing. My marketing is pretty shit. Okay, not a problem. How do I pay off the knowledge gap first and foremost? Oh, I can go watch videos on it. I can go order a book on it and read. Sure, but that's not the adventurous method. The adventurous method is to put yourself in a situation where you are forced to perform, right? Where you can just do things. And because you can just do things, you can create that scenario for you. You can create that situation for you where you have to perform. Sometimes you won't be able to. That's completely fine. You'll use that as a learning curve to perform better next time. But I'm telling you, this method of learning, this method of putting yourself out there is going to condense possibly even 10 years of what it would have taken you down to a few months, maybe even years if you're doing it this way. That's why when I talk with most individuals, and keep in mind, you might have found my results to be impressive with what I did with my business. I have found individuals who have done exactly what I've done, but like 10 times shorter of a timeline, right? And I'm not kidding here. It's because they put themselves in such situations where they have to perform. And if they don't perform, they learn so much that it already puts them way ahead of any type of book that we're going to read, any type of video that they're going to watch, any type of like business that we're going to quote unquote start too. So that's my main thing here. I'm not saying just go start, just go do it. That's what the initial graphic was, right? That's not what I mean, because some people can consider, okay, me reading a book or me watching a video is me starting it. No, I mean being adventurous enough to do something that is not typically thought of, that is a little outside the box, that most people would not adhere to, that most people would have kind of like a negative feeling, like, oh, it's too risky, like I don't want to put myself out there. It would be a little uncomfortable. That's my entire premise on being adventurous, for you to just do things, right? Let's say most of you watching this will probably, whether you're an introvert or whether you're an extrovert, you probably won't have too much experience with pitching people in person, right? Or talking with people in person with regards to finding ideas about a business, starting stuff like this. So one of the first things I would highly recommend is be adventurous enough. If you're in the US, join a local chamber of commerce. Join a local chamber of commerce. Consider yourself as an authority in software because you are a software engineer. Something as simple as I help businesses scale, right, by incorporating software into their systems wherever they need it. That sounds very generic because it is. So if they ask what specifically you help them, just say I audit the business and then I see where software can be integrated, whether it be through a CRM, whether it be through an automation, whatever the case, right? Any type of software will do. That way, you position yourself as an authority, you put yourself in an adventurous enough position where now you're surrounded by business owners and all the skills that you'll need, you'll now have to work on in the moment, right? Because if there's no really stakes to it, you're not going to pay off this knowledge gap soon enough. So it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s, it doesn't matter even if you're 30s, 40s, 50s, if you feel behind. Understand that, let's say somebody in their 30s can pay off the same exact knowledge gap in a shorter amount of time than somebody that's in their early 20s even, taking the normal route, taking the normal route of, books, reading, watching videos. I'm not saying those are useless. They're very useful. Still do them. However, pair them with the adventurous side of things. If you do this, you will literally go so far ahead, it's not even funny, right? And you can even see some of this happening in real time with how I'm approaching YouTube, right? YouTube for me, it's my first social media thing I've ever done. I've been doing it for about a year now because I love it and I love the vision that I have with Code to CEO, so I'm going to keep doing it, right? But the way I've approached it is I took courses, I hired consultants, right? So I did the regular stuff. I did the regular stuff to pay off my knowledge gap, but I'm also doing a lot of adventurous stuff that not a lot of people are doing, right? I'm hosting masterminds all across the world, right? Crazy level masterminds. Traveling with my team to different places on the planet to get more content, to get more footage, right? Doing something that nobody's ever really done with regards to introducing, like an in-person location for specifically members who join Code to CEO. So I'm doing a lot of different things that are quite adventurous. Most people don't really do them. And maybe I haven't even done them before, but I put myself in this situation because I know if I put myself in this situation, I'm going to learn so much and I'm going to pay off this knowledge gap so quickly that it's not really going to matter. Because I don't have to wait another 1 or 2 years to get the results like this. I can just instantly do it. So that's why I've been able to progress relatively quickly when other people look at me, even though I've had no experience whatsoever. And that's the really biggest thing here. So as always, thank you so much for watching and have a good one.